Imagine this. You wake up in the dead of night, your skin slick with sweat, your heart hammering against your ribs like a prisoner begging for release. The room is dark, but not empty. Something is wrong. Not a sound, not a movement, just a crushing, inescapable knowing. You've made choices today, what to eat, what to say, where to go. But here, in the suffocating silence, a question slithers into your mind, venomous and unshakable. Were they ever really yours? History whispers of this terror. In 1974, a Stanford experiment proved that people will justify any action, no matter how cruel, if they believe it was their decision. But what if the decision was never theirs to begin with? What if every thought, every desire, every rebellion was placed there, programmed by forces unseen? Philosophers have clawed at this horror for centuries. Schopenhauer called free will a delusion of the intellect. Nietzsche warned that we are puppets of cosmic forces. Even neuroscience chimes in. Your brain makes decisions before you're aware of them. So who then is really choosing? The most unsettling part. You can't prove it's not true. Every argument you muster, every defiant, but I feel free. What if that too is part of the script? This is not a nightmare you can escape by waking up. Because if the world is programmed, when did the simulation begin? The terror doesn't stop at mere suspicion. It deepens. Because the more you dig, the more you realize this isn't some abstract dystopia. It's already here. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, a hidden layer of the mind where instincts, symbols, and behaviors are pre-installed, like code in a machine. We laugh at the same myths, fear the same shadows, repeat the same cycles of violence, generation after generation. Coincidence or design? Friedrich Nietzsche saw it first. Morality is herd instinct in the individual. The rules you live by, the guilt you feel, the desires you suppress, none of them are yours. They were handed to you, imprinted by culture, religion, and the silent pressure of 1,000 watching eyes. Even your rebellions are predictable. The punk who spikes their hair, the activist who screams into the void, both are playing roles written long before they were born. And then there's the uncanny valley of human behavior. Studies show that people, when placed in identical circumstances, make eerily similar choices. The same lies, the same betrayals, the same justifications for cruelty. It's as if humanity is a broken record, skipping on the same warped note forever. But the most damning evidence. You can't stop looking for patterns. Your brain demands narratives, causality, meaning, even when there is none. What if that desperation for control is the ultimate trap? The illusion that keeps you, docile, searching for answers in a script that was never meant to be questioned. And if that's true, what happens when the program starts to glitch? History is not a record of free will, it's a testament to conditioning. Wars erupt like clockwork, empires rise and fall in predictable cycles. The same atrocities repeat under different names, as if humanity is trapped in a grotesque loop, blindly following an invisible script. Consider the Milgram experiments. Ordinary people, told to administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks, obeyed, not because they wanted to, but because the illusion of authority overrode their morality. Their choices were mere echoes of a system designed to produce compliance. Or take the Jonestown massacre. 900 people didn't just decide to drink cyanide. They were broken down, reprogrammed, until suicide felt like salvation. Free will didn't save them. It was erased, layer by layer, replaced by something far more sinister, the certainty that they had none. Even now, algorithms shape your desires. Social media feeds manipulate your emotions. Advertisements implant cravings you never asked for. Your political beliefs, your tastes, even your relationships are curated by forces you didn't choose. And the most terrifying part, you don't even notice, because the human mind doesn't rebel against its chains. It rationalizes them. Cognitive dissonance ensures that you'll warp reality before admitting you're not in control. You'll call it fate, call it God, call it just the way things are. Anything to avoid the unbearable truth. You were never free, and if that's the case, what else have you been programmed to ignore? There is a moment, rare, violent in its clarity, when the illusion cracks. When you see the strings. Viktor Frankl, imprisoned in Auschwitz, discovered it. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. Even in hell, there was a sliver of something real. Not control over his fate, but over his perception of it. This is the first rebellion. Not the delusion that you can rewrite the program, but the realization that you can see it. The addict who admits they're addicted, the propagandized who notices the propaganda, the dreamer who wakes just enough to whisper, "This is a dream." History's great heretics, Socrates, Galileo, Orwell, shared one trait. They questioned the default script. They paid for it in blood, but their defiance proved something terrifying and beautiful. The program has bugs, systems fail, conditioning wears thin, and sometimes a mind slips through the cracks. But awakening is not freedom. It's the beginning of a war against the reflexes in your own skull, the social puppeteers, the dopamine traps masquerading as choice. The Zen masters called it killing the mind. The philosophers called it radical doubt. You'll call it agony, because once you see the prison, you can't unsee it, and the prison fights back. So ask yourself, how badly do you want to wake up? Here is the secret they never wanted you to hear. The program is not just around you, it is you. Your thoughts are not yours. Your fears were planted. Your desires were manufactured. Even this moment, this spark of defiance, this hunger for truth, was anticipated, accounted for, perhaps even allowed. Because the system's greatest trick isn't control, it's the illusion of escape. Jean-Paul Sartre glimpsed it. We are condemned to be free. But what if the condemnation runs deeper? What if the very concept of freedom is the cage? That every time you struggle, every time you rage against the machine, you're still dancing to its rhythm. That the rebel and the conformist are just two sides of the same programmed coin? The evidence is in the patterns, the way revolutions always end in new tyrannies, the way spiritual awakenings calcify into dogma, the way every generation believes this time will be different, only to repeat the same mistakes. But there is one fracture in the code, one glitch they couldn't patch. You are aware of it, that changes everything, because awareness is the one thing the system cannot fake, the one variable it cannot predict, the thought in the dark that whispers, "I see you." And so the final question isn't whether free will exists. It's this: now that you know, what will you do with the knowledge? The script is written, but the ink is still wet.